Lies, damn lies, and Keir Starmer. Why is our Prime Minister so economical with the truth?
From tax to teachers to Brexit, we debunk Labour's dodgy statistics. Rachel Reeves had said that in order to fix her headroom problem, she had a choice between two awful things. One is to raise rates of taxes, or the second is to cut capital spending. She's actually done neither.
Yeah.
So where does it fit in? How do we fix the accounts if we haven't done either of the two things that she said were essential to do in order to make the budget work?
Yeah, it's all smoke and mirrors.
This is the point, is basically everything's being kicked towards the end of this parliament.
And a cynic would say you're doing that because when you're going to campaign in the next general election, you can use the figures for the end of the parliament and it's going to make Labour look good. Before we get on to Starmer, liar, liar, pants on fire, can I just raise something with you? Because I overheard a rather intriguing conversation that you had just before we came into the studio.
Yeah.
I think with the kennel that is going to be looking after Bertie.
I'm going on holiday for Christmas and my dog is going to a kennels and I got an email asking for the second half of the payment, which is fine. But in the email, it also said, by the way, it's an extra £10 if you want him to meet Santa in the grotto.
Because
they're putting on a Santa's grotto.
He would quite like to meet Santa. And I thought, who is he talking about? Then I realised you were talking about your own dog.
My first thought was, what am I, Marie Antoinette? I'm paying for my dog to meet Father Christmas. Yeah. On the other hand, I thought, if I don't pay this and Father Christmas arrives, all the other dogs are going to be queuing up to sit on his lap and my poor dog's going to be to one side. I
know, isolated.
Shivering, ignored.
In a dog silo.
I'm going to have to give him the £10. And I gave him the £10 and I said, there will be a photo, won't there? I am going to get a photo for £10.
Can I just ask, is Santa going to be a big dog? Dressed up. And then are they going to take the mickey and have some cats as elves?
I like to think they do it really seriously.
I want a St. Bernard. I want to see a St. Bernard in a Santa outfit with Bertie on his lap.
It's a 16-year-old kid in a Santa outfit with a fag in his mouth and lots of dogs barking and running around at his feet. But
maybe having some disguised sausages in his pockets.
I think it's adorable.
It is adorable and we look forward to seeing those photos. Should we get into a very interesting PMQ? Well, you've been busy. You've been in Parliament. You did the Rachel Reeves session.
Rachel Reeves was interrogated by a Treasury committee in which they mostly wanted to know about the leaks that occurred before the budget. But in the course of that, she was also asked what role the Prime Minister played in the writing of the budget. And she said, we made 2 or 3 times a week. So it turns out that actually Keir Starmer shares some of the blame for the budget from hell.
I was just thinking, meetings you wouldn't want to be a fly on the wall at.
Oh,
Starmer
they just sit in
Reeves.
silence, staring at each other over a plate of cold peas. But so that was an interesting thing that came out of that. And then we moved on to PMQs, where the Prime Minister was his usual very grey self. And I thought Kemi had another excellent week.
Yes, somebody showed me a More in Common poll where she's shot up in the approval ratings and is just trailing behind Farage. And I thought, that's interesting. Is that since the budget rebuttal? And actually, we had some drinks with the leader of the opposition on Monday.
You did. I wasn't invited.
No, quite rightly, actually. And keep the riff-raff out.
Yeah.
I was in that room and I thought, when was I last here? And I thought, I was having a Christmas drink with Angela Rayner. How times have changed. Anyway, and we did that thing of being in a horseshoe, questioning her. And I was quite intrigued as to her reaction to the rap video that was made after the budget response. And she said she found it quite funny. And I just think it's interesting that you can control some media, but sometimes things just take off. Mm-hmm. And that will have introduced her to a new, younger audience that may have not heard of her before. And all of that kind of organic social material probably does help in the long run, provided it casts her in a good light, which it did in that case.
As for PMQs, sometimes they do make the news. I think people do get to see them. Things are more disseminated than they used to be through social media. But ultimately, PMQs are about giving a morale boost to your own side. And it has meant a lot to Tory MPs to see their leader, quote-unquote, winning PMQs.
Yes.
It gives them a sense of confidence because, as Keir Starmer pointed out, there have, in the past week, been, I think, the defections of 3 ex-MPs to reform,
and a
Tory
Scottish
MPs.
peer.
And a Scottish peer. So there is still something of a brain drain going on towards reform, and the party does need to boost its morale. As for Kemi's performance, she structured this week's questions quite well. She began with the question, why are MPs in your own party describing you as a caretaker leader?
Can the right honourable gentleman tell the House Why are his own MPs describing him as a caretaker Prime Minister?
Mr. Speaker, my own MPs are very proud. We've just passed a budget which protected our public services and our NHS. No austerity which brought our NHS to the ground. We've created the conditions for economic stability with the headroom we need.
Then I think she decided to take the tack that actually the Daily Tea has been taking in recent days and weeks, to call out some of the, let's call them untruths, let's be generous, some of the untruths at the heart of Labour. So if you actually just trace the whole week, there are a number of different, lies that I think the government has been caught out in.
Because at the core of this government, and this came up at the Treasury Committee with Rachel Reeves, is the central lie that they inherited a situation that was so bad, £22 billion black hole, that everything they have had to do since has been forced upon them. And they've done the best possible job they can, and they're actually doing quite well in the circumstances.
Yes.
That's the central myth of Labour, which has been debunked, that actually the situation was not that bad. And as she went on to argue today, sort of lots of little lies have emerged, like sort of sprouted from this big central lie about Labour's performance, which runs across many different departments.
Many departments.
Yeah, okay.
Well, let's look at lie number one, and that comes down to the budget, and it was touched upon at the meeting you were at this morning. Many accusations of untruths when it comes to the budget that was presented a couple of Wednesdays ago. Have they breached the manifesto because they promised not to tax working people more? But you look at a £26 billion increase on taxes on working people, even though it's not direct, it's through the medium of freezing the thresholds for a further 3 years. And you say to yourself, well, yes, it's not only a manifesto breach, but it's a breach of your own pledge, because what's the truth of the matter, Tim? Last year, she said, and I quote, "I've come to the conclusion that extending the threshold freeze would hurt working people. It would take more money out of their payslips." So you said last year that it would tax working people. You've done it this year, and you've insisted it isn't a tax on working people. I mean, it's not just gaslighting the public, that's a downright lie.
The Treasury Committee contains Tories, Lib Dems, Labour, of course. So the questions that were asked to her came from all parties. And the things that came up were, taxing people extra by freezing thresholds is an unprogressive way to raise tax. Because if you just said, right, the top earners no longer just pay 40 but now pay 45 or 50%, then okay, you're targeting the very rich.
Yes.
But if you're allowing everyone to slip into a higher tax band every time that their salary goes up a little bit, then that hits everyone. So it's not progressive, was one charge put to her. Another was, this is really surprising, I didn't know this, most of the tax rises and most of the supposedly good news that she has planned for us is all packed for the end of this Parliament. It's not coming in now. So this is the point we had when we had John Redwood on about how the debt is actually still racking up. The good work that her fiscal headroom is supposed to be doing, you might think that it's happening right now because of what she's done. Actually, no, it's all planned to take place later in the Parliament. And therefore, it's based in part upon projections again. And you don't know what's going to change. Tiny things can happen, like, as she mentioned, Donald Trump's tariffs. Things can come out of the blue and completely surprise you.
Well, the Employment Rights Bill isn't factored into any of the forecasting.
Right.
And
so,
that's predicted to wreak havoc.
Right, exactly. So the headroom might disappear as well. And also the point was made that when it comes to the cost of living crisis, it is true that in the last 2 years, wages have risen significantly, as a good thing. And of course, things like interest rates have come down. But again, if you look at the projections for 2 or 3 years hence, the situation is projected to be a bit worse. Still improving, but not as fast and not as well to keep up with the rise in prices. So in other words, a lot of what we've had in the last couple of weeks sounds like she has flicked a switch and fixed the economy and the accounts all in one go. But what she's really done is she has delayed it all to the end of the Parliament. One final one I'll give, which was raised by a Tory on the committee, is that Rachel Reeves had said that in order to fix her headroom problem, she had a choice between two awful things. One is to raise rates of taxes, or the second is to cut capital spending. Well, by her own lights, because she doesn't consider the threshold point to be raising the rates of tax, she's actually done neither.
Yeah.
So where does it fit in? How do we fix the accounts if we haven't done either of the two things that she said were essential to do in order to make the budget work?
Yeah, it's all smoke and mirrors.
This is the point, is basically everything's being kicked towards the end of this parliament.
And a cynic would say you're doing that because when you're going to campaign in the next general election, you can use the figures for the end of the parliament and it's going to make Labour look good.
Plus, that election might be in 2 years, in which case they might have a treasure chest by that point they can play with.
Let's look at lie number 2. So Kemi Badenoch asked Keir Starmer in PMQs, by how much have energy bills gone down? This was his response.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to say we're taking £150 off energy bills. I can also tell her that that's on top of the £150 we've taken off last year for the 3 million poorest families, now for 6 million poorest families.
But what's the truth of the matter? I found it laughable to hear the Prime Minister suggest that energy bills have come down. Anyone that's got the radiators on right now knows that isn't true. Lo and behold, the truth of the matter is as follows. The Centre for Policy Studies think tank says because the price cap went up to £1,755 in October, we're all now paying £187 on average more for our energy.
What he was probably referring to, Starmer, is the decision in the budget to reduce the costs of levies on energy bills, which they claim will remove about £150 from average household bills.
Again,
if you
more
remember
smoke
this,
and mirrors.
you remember that he boasted that this was mentioned in front of a group of nurses and they clapped. But the point is overall, your bill's probably gone up vastly, and it's going to fall by a little bit.
No, but it's how he says it, as if, oh well, everybody knows, and everyone's going, no, everyone knows the opposite is true. The same, by the way. This is a bit more tight in terms of the data, but Kemi Badenoch, who's clearly had a look at some of the figures before she's entered the chamber, then asked the Prime Minister how many extra teachers there were, bearing in mind that the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, who she pointed out on the front bench, has constantly banged on about there being 6,500 more teachers as a result of putting VAT on private school fees. That's what that extra tax was meant to pay for.
Which has had no effect upon private education. None whatsoever. I'm joking.
I was going to say, how dare you?
But they will insist that.
No, they will insist
It's had no impact whatsoever.
Let's listen to Badenoch's reply.
Wrong. Mr. Speaker, there are now 400 fewer teachers since she came into office. She's shaking her head. It's on the DFE website. Does she not check it once in a while?
And to be fair to her, that is borne out by the statistics. The Department for Education's own figures show there are 400 fewer teachers in 2024 compared to 2023.
We should say that these figures are based on a November 2024 census of the previous year, and we can't tell whether the reduction happened under the Conservatives or under Labour, who were both in office during that time.
Let's look at another lie. Police numbers have gone up. So Starmer promised 3,000 more police officers by the end of March, having been asked by Kemi Badenoch how his pledge to recruit 13,000 new officers were going. What's the truth of the matter, Tim?
It's unclear how the government will actually do that. According to Home Office figures, there are 146,442 full-time equivalent police officers as of March 2025. That is down 1,303, or 0.9%, compared to March 2024.
So numbers down again.
Numbers down.
Another lie. We've had a debate this week as well, just to speak of another, maybe it's not an untruth, but it's perhaps misleading. Anne Longfield, who's the former Children's Commissioner, has been appointed to chair the inquiry into child rape gangs. Labour are insisting this is an impartial appointment, that she will not let party politics get in the way of officiating what is going to be a very significant and high-profile national inquiry. However, she is a former Labour peer. She's going to become a crossbencher, but that is not going to satisfy survivors who are worried that if Labour investigates itself, because a lot of the constituencies involved in this scandal, Rochdale, Rotherham, wherever else, are all Labour run. Labour councils and councillors are complicit in this. allegedly. Is she the right person to be leading this?
Well, the grooming survivor Fiona Goddard has said that she is disappointed at Baroness Longfield's appointment, and Marlon West, father of survivor Scarlett, has said the same because Longfield is a Labour peer. He told Sky News, "A lot of the survivors are concerned with trust around Labour. We were hoping it would be a judge."
Why not get a judge?
Why not get a foreign judge? It's quite clear that people don't feel they can trust the establishment on this one, and I can understand why, because the establishment, well, parts of the establishment, key institutions, were involved in cover-ups.
Hang on, Keir Starmer said that any call for an inquiry was, quotes, jumping on a far-right bandwagon.
Ah, well, and of course, Lucy Powell echoed similar comments famously in conversation with Tim Montgomery. We should add that whistleblower Jane Senior has welcomed the appointment.
And then let's deal with lie number 6, which again is in the background and we need to discuss.
Yes.
And this is this idea that Labour will absolutely not reverse Brexit.
There were 2 questions raised about this during PMQs, and it's notable who asked them because these parties are obsessed with it. One was Ed Davey, who asked about return to the customs union. The other was good old Plaid. I always love it when Plaid has a question.
Oh, Plaid. I mean, it's great to hear them asking a question that isn't about Nigel Farage, to be fair.
I just don't understand why you want to leave the UK but join the EU.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
The EU is worse than the UK.
Well, I know. It's a basket case.
Do you want to be run from London? Do you want to be run from Brussels? Okay.
What's worrying about all this is that the Prime Minister has previously said they're not going to cross the red line of rejoining the single market or the customs union. He repeated it at PMQs, but hang on a minute. I'm a bit suspicious about the truth behind this assertion that he's not trying to reverse Brexit for a couple of reasons. First of all, he gives this absolutely ridiculous, soft-soapy interview to The Observer, where The Observer basically spends an hour with him asking him why he's so great, okay, in which he is asked 5 times to rule out rejoining the EU in his lifetime. He cannot answer the question.
He does reveal that he came from a working-class family, though.
Apparently his father was a toolmaker, and he is, by the way, a good dad. Right. And don't have anyone say anything different. And then we've got David Lammy, who in turn was asked 7 times to rule out the prospect of reversing Brexit, and again couldn't rule it out. So are we to believe these people, these arch Romaniacs?
Yes. The argument of people like Davey is your budget was rubbish, you're raising taxes. The OBR infamously said there was nothing in this budget that would spark growth. And to go back to the Treasury Committee, when she was asked about growth measures, she came up with things like someone's just opened a film studio. And I'm not joking. She mentioned that Co-op have cut prices across their stores.
Are you joking? What? Oh, my God.
She's doing ads for supermarkets now. So in other words, if there is no obvious source of growth, then there is one thing left open to you. And that's the customs union. And the way Ed Davey framed it was, and this brings us back to Kemi Badenoch's question about him being a caretaker prime minister and all the other ministers wanting his job. If he doesn't accept the customs union, is there a risk that in 12 months' time he'll be gone? Now, the way Davey posed the question was clumsy and almost threatening and sounded like Davey planned to kill him. But, because he said in 12 months' time, you won't be here.
Yes.
But the point is fair, that if the economy continues to go downhill, and at the same time he is taking off the table the one thing that Remainers and some of the left believe is necessary and just and could save Britain, then will a time come when someone within the cabinet finally says, you must go, so that we can do the obvious thing and rejoin the customs union? I have thought of one more lie. We're into the addendum category now, but there's one more lie which is on trial by jury. And this point was made in the last question asked by a Labour MP, which is if the whole point of reducing trial by jury is to clear the backlog of 80,000 cases, then, asked the MP, why don't you put a sunset clause on it?
Yes.
Once you've cleared the backlog, then we can restore trial by jury in those cases.
Also, there is a final lie, by the way, and it's been exposed by a publican called James Fowler, who's owner of the Larder House in Southbourne. Now, he has taken the decision to ban his local MP, who is a Labour MP, Tom Hayes, from his pub, and he's launched a campaign banning Labour MPs from all pubs that want to sign up to it, on the basis of the lie, another lie in the budget, which was the business rates changes have benefited the hospitality industry.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes,
it's
yes.
such a lie. Now, let me just point out this man's poster, which basically sums up the issue for publicans and landlords across the land. This is the truth of the "this budget is great for pubs" lie. Only 1 in 10 pubs will be profitable following Labour's new budget. Fact. A hospitality business now closes every day. Fact. The government now makes more in a pint than your pub does. Fact. And it basically says, we can't afford to go on strike, we can't afford to close, we can't afford to go to London, so this is our industrial action in the only way we can. Fact. Banning Labour MPs.
So I've lost count of how many lies we've exposed there. I think we might be up to 8, which is
Yes.
an octet. An octopus of lies
And deceit.
coming from this government.
If you're enjoying our journalism, why not sign up to From the Editor, our free email newsletter? Start your day with the latest news and opinion, plus our bite-sized puzzles. Scan the QR code to sign up free today.